Okay, so idea here is I'm going to run through a presentation about cats, which, obviously you guys are used to being around doggies. I'll explain why we're going to be talking about Dobby, my cat. But at the end and also throughout, if you guys have any specific questions, please feel free to jump in. Otherwise, I'll just open it up at the end and we can talk about anything that's relevant, either not in this presentation that impacts you and your program and your social media specifically, or I can go back through anything from this specific presentation. So just as kind of like a high level here, this is not intended to be a step-by-step roadmap on how to get more followers, but the goal is really to give you all tips to consider for your own brand, for your own program, for your social media accounts, and then do what works for you and your specific audience. So a little background here, Dobby is my cat. I'll play this little video. This is her. And just as kind of like funny context, I never intended to have a famous cat, and she's not super famous, but she has about 70,000 followers across her social media channels. This actually started as a bet with my husband's sister's boyfriend. And he told me that it was actually really hard to get social media followers and especially to make a pet famous. And I really don't like to be told no. So I just decided to see if I could do it on my own. Was very fortunate that it worked. And I didn't really realize until I went back and studied what had exactly happened that I realized I was doing some things that would apply to other people's businesses or other accounts that people would want to grow. So yeah, I'll do a little high level of Dobby's Instagram here. Whoops, this is Dobby. You might see her pop in and out of the camera. She's around here somewhere. So right now she's got about 32,000 followers on Instagram, about 34 and a half followers on TikTok. And the effort that I put into doing that was extremely low. Like, I cannot emphasize this enough. And that's really important for breeders because I know you guys are really busy and don't have a lot of time to focus on just growing an Instagram following. So I'm going to try to give you some tips on how to grow a following without making it your full-time job. So a high level of the tips that I'm going to cover today. One is know your voice, style, and audience. One is highlight the unique, share consistently, give an inside look, cross promote. You'll see I love a good pun, and take quality pictures and videos. So on the first one of the things that I did with Dobby's Instagram, and just so you guys know, the way I'm going to run through this presentation is to talk about what I did for Dobby and then give some tips on how it applies to breeders and to Instagram or TikTok or other social media accounts generally.
And so Brittany, if you don't mind, I just want to add really quick, just keep in mind, you guys, you can take notes if you want to, but we're going to provide, I'm going to provide notes for y'all. So don't feel like you need to write anything down or whatever, just a reminder.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. Move my camera here. Okay. So the first one is to know your voice, style, and audience. So for Dobby, I used a ton of cat puns. I really love to be punny, and this was an amazing creative outlet for me to come up with probably more obnoxious cat puns than the audience may have wanted. I also used a little bit of an immature voice. So I talked about Dobby's parents. Like, I would say my parents gave me this. She's very sassy, so I let that part of her personality come out, especially in the videos. But importantly, I avoided all controversy. Anything that could even be perceived as controversial, I did not post about it at all. And that was by design, both for me and for the audience. I loved working on Dobby's Instagram because it was like a fun outlet that was completely stress-free for me. And I think that came through in a lot of her posts. So people would often comment or send me DMs that said that when they need a break from the stress of their work, they go to Dobby's Instagram because they know it's just a happy place and they can engage with really funny content and her pictures make them smile. So I always wanted to give that to the audience because that was very clearly what they were looking for. Also for that reason, I really avoided overselling, over branding. I think this is one important thing to point out, which is Dobby's Instagram was not then, has never been, and will never be a business. So the idea here was not for me to make money off of this. I will share separately that I did do a branding deal with her once, but it didn't really feel that on brand for her. So for that reason, I don't watermark. I don't put things over her pictures. I'm not trying to oversell products. If there's something that she uses and actually likes, then I would sometimes share it, but I didn't want people to feel like coming to Dobby's Instagram was like coming to an advertisement. Yeah, Liza, did you have a question?
Do you have any suggestions for breeders that like to watermark photos? I mean, I know it's a safety thing.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is like, well, maybe you just need to pick one or the other. Do you want a watermark or do you want more followers? Like, do you have
So
suggestions?
yeah, totally. I think it's a trade-off. I didn't really care that much, although I will share that there were times where people reposted the videos and didn't credit Dobby, and it was like frustrating. I think it'd be even more frustrating if it was a business. And we know as a company that breeders are really on the receiving end of a lot of the negative stealing of photos, where scammers will steal your photos and then pose as a real breeder. So that's a really, really bad outcome that you want to definitely try to avoid. I think it's okay to watermark, but I think if you're going to watermark, you need to understand that there might be a little bit of a lower level of engagement and reposting than you would have on a non-watermarked photo, and that's completely fine. So maybe you don't need to watermark every picture. Like for example, if you're showing a whelping pen, maybe that's not something that needs to be watermarked because you're not as afraid of somebody stealing that. But if it's a puppy photo and you're concerned that people might steal it and use it for bad purposes, or really just use it for their own purposes without crediting you, you may want to watermark. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. I think my takeaway is that like you said, it's a trade-off. If you watermark, you may not get as many reposts, shares. So just something to consider. I never thought about that. It's great.
Exactly. And I think the breeder tip at the bottom here is an important one. So I know from speaking with a lot of breeders that sometimes being out front and having your face on Instagram or on TikTok or speaking directly to your audience is a little bit intimidating. And I think it's important to note you don't actually have to be the voice of your account. So you can choose who is, quote, out front on your social media. You can use the voice of a dog. You can use a dam, a sire, use your puppies, and the voice can change. You can have the voice of a dog parent or of a breeder. You can speak personally. You can speak from the voice of your program. You are in complete control of your Instagram. But if you are personally not a fan of having your face on social media, I can speak personally and tell you it makes me very uncomfortable when I am directly on camera. But speaking as Dobby was freeing and was much, much easier. So if that speaks to you as a breeder, then you should feel very empowered to do that. Any questions on this before I go on to the next one? Okay. I can figure out how to change slides. So the next one is to highlight the unique qualities of whatever you're sharing on Instagram. And I'll focus specifically on Instagram. TikTok is a little bit of a different beast. I'm happy to speak about TikTok if you guys are interested. I can even do a different presentation on that. But specifically with Dobby's Instagram, her ears are huge. They are literally like little satellite dishes. And people really responded well to seeing her ears, especially any photos that really highlighted her ears, like this one, got a lot of likes and a lot of engagement. Sorry if you hear that beeping, it's my dishwasher. Also, Devon Rex cats are a very unique breed. A lot of people that responded to her Instagram had never even seen a Devon Rex that looked like Dobby before. And also her personality is really sassy. So this is important because a lot of people are confused when they post super cute pictures of dogs and they're not getting a lot of engagement. And a lot of that is because millions and millions of people also have really cute dogs. And it's very difficult to stand out among a crowd of, honestly, sometimes tens of millions of posts a day that are all really cute that a lot of people would love to see. So it's important for you as a breeder and in your specific program to think about what quality of your program, and maybe it's many things, are unique relative to other breeders, relative to other puppy posts that might be out there. So some examples I wrote here are, do you live in a unique area of the country? I have FaceTimed with some breeders who live on absolutely beautiful farms. So for example, it might be interesting for people to see some of that landscape and see the puppies outside on that landscape. Also, do you do something unique on the go home days? So puppy packs that you do differently than a lot of other breeders. That might be an interesting way to stand out. And I'll speak to this a little bit more in a later slide about kind of going behind the scenes, but pointing out things that are really unique about your dogs, unique about the program. Maybe you breed something that's a little unique or you do things in a little bit of a different way. Make sure to showcase that and it'll make you stand out among all of the other posts that are kind of floating around on the internet that day. Any questions? Okay, next. Share consistently. So this is like my favorite picture of Dobby. I think she was like 5 minutes old when this was taken. She looks like such a little ball. Floof. Um, I remember this was a picture we got before we brought her home, and I was like, we have the cutest cat in the entire world. But so on sharing consistently, it's important to state that is not oversharing. That does not mean sharing often, multiple times a day, even, because you, as someone who follows people on social media, probably also feels that too much sharing from one account can dominate your social media feed, and it's not always better. More is not more. So what I mean by consistently is getting into a rhythm of how often you share content and staying to that. So for Dobby's Instagram, I used to post 2 times a week, sometimes once a week. But if I would go more than a couple of weeks without a post, I would see followers drop off, I would see engagement drop off, and I would even have people DM me and ask if Dobby was okay. That happened actually very regularly because people get very attached to those they follow on social media. And because they loved Dobby and they wanted to see more of her, they got really worried when I would go sometimes like a month or a month and a half without posting because I was busy in my life. And as I mentioned, this was not my business. It was absolutely a hobby on the side. But I did see people unfollow the account or the engagement would drop off as a result. So one of the tips that I want to share here is that doesn't mean you have to be on Instagram twice a week posting content. You can pick a day, honestly, one day out of your month, one day every other month, whatever it is, and tee up a lot of Instagram posts or social media posts generally for the coming month. There are tons of free tools. We've used a few with TellTail. For some examples that you can use, Canva has an incredible scheduling tool that they just came out with. We have been loving it, and you can create posts in Canva, share them to the Canva calendar, and it just automatically posts to your Instagram or your Facebook. There's another one that's free called Buffer. So we can talk more about those tools later if you guys are interested, but it really saves on time and also doesn't become as disruptive to your schedule. Okay, next one. Give an inside look. So this is the one I was mentioning earlier about kind of going behind the scenes of what's going on in your program. So you want to give followers something that they can't get if they were to just Google or go to your website, or even in their own programs if you're talking about having breeders that follow you. So it's important to kind of give them like a behind the scenes. So on that point, the trend that people are seeing right now in social media is really that raw content is much more well received than more polished content. And that is a big change over time from how people used to use social media. So if you think back to even just a few years ago, the pictures that were posted were perfect. They were perfectly filtered, perfectly staged, like everything was flawless. And now more raw, real content is resonating more with audiences. So one example on the left here is a picture of Dobby on the cable box. Granted, she is posing in a really cute little head nod. But the reason why this was one of our most liked photos ever is because people just were so interested that she sleeps on the cable box. And she does still do this. She loves the cable box because it's warm. And people found that so fascinating and asked me tons of questions about how often she sleeps on the cable box. If we have multiple cable boxes, you would not believe the amount of discussion we had in the comments and in my DMs about Dobby sleeping on a cable box, because it was something that they had never seen Dobby do before. And they had, if you don't have a cat or your cat doesn't do this, it's just very fascinating, apparently. So giving followers more than just a one-dimensional view of whatever the substance of the content is. So in this case, my cat, more than just having her eat or sleep on a couch or be, cuddly or purring. They were like, how fascinating that she has this other part of her personality where she sleeps on a cable box. So as far as how that applies to breeders, there is so much about your program that pet parents and other breeders would love to see and would find fascinating. And it's often things that you may think are completely normal and are not that fascinating. So this is probably why many of you are bombarded with requests for photos where people want to see their dog literally just breathing before they bring it home because they're so excited for that dog to become a part of their family. But that goes for people who are not necessarily on your waiting list or waiting to bring a puppy home. They'd be excited to see you feed them mush or for them to go outside and run around or to take a trip to the vet. And again, because the trend is to lean towards raw and less polished, being able to just snap a quick photo on your iPhone or snap a quick video and upload that to your social media really goes a long way.
I was going to also add that, if you don't have it on your own account, sometimes you can just pull from like other accounts that are similar, or other accounts that you follow that you find valuable, because it's still a way to keep your followers engaged and you don't have to create that content yourself.
Exactly. That's a great point. Liza, did you want to add something? Whoop, you're muted.
Thank you. We actually touched on this yesterday in our website workshop as well, just like on the on your About Me page or About Us page on your website. People really, really want to know things about your day-to-day life. I mean, people just, they want that relatable content. They want to feel like you're a real person that they could be friends with in real life. What are your dogs doing right now? Where do your dogs sleep? Where, what do you do day to day? I mean, so it kind of ties into, your website as well. Like I said, like we discussed yesterday, it's really, I feel like it's a newer trend. Like people just want real stuff, like just a picture of your dog eating or something.
Yeah.
Like, they love it. It makes it feel like they're there with you.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And I think Liza and I were just speaking about this the other day, but like people want to get to know their breeder. It is such a personal relationship, and it should be. That's how we feel, that your relationship with your breeder should not stop when you bring home your dog. So they want to stay connected with you. They want to understand what's going on in your daily life. What are your other litters that you're dealing with now? So one thing I do want to flag though is, in speaking with as many breeders as we have throughout creating TellTail, we know there's a lot of sensitivity around what you share, because putting yourself out there on the internet sometimes opens you up to a lot of criticism. And, if you have a dog outside and somebody sees a fence, like all of a sudden you're in a big debate online about whether that fence is the right fence. I'm making that up as an example, but people have opinions about a lot of different things. So I think it's also important to realize you are in complete control of your account. You do not have to share anything you don't want to share. You don't have to share a photo that you think may put you in a bad light. You can delete things, and you should feel empowered to share what you want to share. But at the same time, you can control the level of exposure that you have as a breeder and with your program. So any questions on that? Cool. This is a big one I want to spend some time on. Cross permo. I told you the puns are big. They're not going anywhere. So this video, I'll play it one more time for you guys.
I'll play it again.
Okay. So this was the video. This was the one that made Dobby famous. And the reason why is I started posting on her Instagram, and I was getting a little bit of traction, some people that were following, people that were liking, engaging, whatever. But I did not have a lot of traction until Cats of Instagram picked this video up. And I remember it was Thanksgiving weekend, and apparently a lot of people were on their phones that day, because it absolutely blew up. And we all of a sudden got about 5,000 followers immediately after this was shared to the Cats of Instagram account. And what was interesting about that is that it created a tipping point where once you hit a certain threshold of followers, all of a sudden people are like, well, there must be something interesting here, because 5,000 people follow this cat. And then all of a sudden it started to snowball beyond that. I raise that because if you can get yourself to a Cats of Instagram tipping point, it does make things a bit easier when you try to grow from there. And you do that through cross promotion. And so, I mean, you can, of course, grow organically, and the Instagram or the TikTok algorithm may be in your favor that day and put you in front of a bunch of people's eyeballs. But largely, you see people growing quickly when they cross promote. So that means finding other breeders, finding brands, finding pet parents, whatever it may be, to help share your account to their audience. And what's great about that is that the cross promotion often happens from audiences that are probably interested in your content. So Dobby's a cat. Therefore, people who follow Cats of Instagram are interested in cats. And so it helped to increase her followers. So on that point, hashtags are also a great way to get in front of a bunch of other people that don't already follow you, because that's what makes you searchable within the social media platform. Hashtags are a tricky thing, and I'm happy to talk more about it at the end if you guys are interested in this. Some people feel that using the hashtags that are the most common are the best way to get in front of people, but that's actually not always true. So if you use hashtag dog, there are probably hundreds of millions, maybe even over a billion photos associated with hashtag dog. And so the problem is as a dog breeder, if you're trying to get more eyeballs and more follows, sure, there are a lot of people viewing hashtag dog, but there are also hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of posts on any given day that also are using that hashtag. So you can have several hashtags in each photo caption. So what I did for Dobby was, honestly, I experimented a little bit on what worked well. So there were some that were a little more narrow. Also want to be careful about being too narrow, like Dobby the orange cat. Nobody is out there on Instagram searching Dobby the orange cat. And so that wasn't really going to give me any traction. So I did a mix. It was hashtag cats of Instagram, hashtag like, furry cat or whatever. But then I also did hashtag Devon Rex, which was a really good one for us because there are some people that are just really interested in searching for Devon Rex cats. And so that was getting picked up anytime that I would add that hashtag. And I kind of, is more of an art than a science. I sometimes would change them depending on the day. Like if it was a holiday, like Halloween, for example, I would do like hashtag Halloween cats just to see what might pick up and might work.
One thing that I can add that I learned, I went to like a Meta Facebook conference and they talked about hashtags, and like usually 5 to 15 is like the most optimal. You can go up to 30. More doesn't always mean better. But having a variety, like Brittany said, you can also choose like the time of year or something that's like specific to your location. So maybe if you live in a particular like state or like a particular county and you have things like that, or if it's a particular season, and you can maybe like dogs of Christmas or something, I don't know, whatever it may be, that's relevant, can help. Or maybe like a particular food brand, stuff like that people could potentially be searching, but also allows for a variety and mix.
Yeah, and you can change them and experiment. If you have one post that just seems to knock it out of the park, consider whether it was the hashtags that helped you do that and maybe try to repost them on another post. Liza, do you want to jump in? Oh, I think you're muted again. I do feel that by the end of this, you're gonna
I'll get this right. So I've been sending everybody a link to my SEO article that's on TellTail.com, and it might be worth reading concerning like this hashtag thing. I think they tie together. So one SEO trick is to pick niche keywords instead of a super broad keyword like dogs, for example. You want to narrow it down to smaller, you want to compete with less people. So I find that really interesting that also applies to the hashtags. Like you don't want to be competing with 10 million people with your hashtag. You want to be competing with maybe 10,000 instead. And so finding that sweet spot, I would love to learn more about that sometime. Maybe
I'm happy to share any other knowledge I have on that. Like just as an example too, I found Dobby has some of the best engagement I have honestly ever seen on a pet's Instagram. Sometimes you'll see somebody who has 500,000 followers and then you look and their photo only has like 1,000 likes and you're like, well, that's weird. 1% of their followers or less are liking each of these photos. That doesn't make sense. For Dobby's, I mean, it's tapered off a little bit. I've heard there were some changes in the Instagram algorithm, but in her prime, I mean, we were getting 8,000 to 10,000 likes on these photos and she only had at that time like 20,000 followers. So I think a lot of that comes also from the hashtags that I was using because I was getting a really targeted audience that was very interested in specifically Devon Rex cat or orange cat content. Maybe it was my puns, we'll never really know. I'd like to credit my puns for it, but another thing, and Sushmitha touched on this a little bit when she mentioned brands, but tagging relevant brands on your posts is also a good way to get noticed by the brands and also to be found sort of in other searches. I'll caution you that the brands sometimes may find it a little bit annoying if you're tagging them all the time for things that are not relevant to them at all. I definitely did that for a little while and realized I should probably back off. I was just tagging like every pet company you can imagine in every single post until they gave me a cap on how many I could tag. But when I was able to target things that were a little bit more relevant, like if she was eating a particular food, or I don't even know what a good example would be, I found it was more well received. But like there are other cats of Instagram style accounts, like Excellent Cats or Orange Cats of Instagram, Animals of Instagram, whatever it was. I would tag those as well in hopes that those brands or those accounts would see Dobby's post and then want to reshare it on their platform. And then I think on the last one, just engaging with your audience helps them to A, be more engaged, and B, recommend things to their friends. So people would often tag their friends in the post to say, you should follow this cat, she's so cute. And so that helps you to grow your following. But that means responding to DMs and either responding in the voice of whatever the account is or responding as yourself, you choose. But also liking comments, responding to questions that people ask on your posts, liking things that people say. So that's a good way to stay engaged with your followers. One of the tips that I was thinking about specifically for breeders is when you send puppies home to new families, a lot of them create Instagram accounts for the dog that they brought home, or they have their own personal Instagram accounts. So those are just built-in networks that you should definitely try to capture as a breeder. So either following those dogs and asking them to follow you back, cross-promoting content with those pet parents, because each of them have their own networks. That's just a great way to take your real life network and translate it to a social network. Any questions on cross-promotion? I can always come back to this later too. Okay. The last kind of key tip here is to take quality pictures and videos. And I know that might sound obvious, but quality also has been a little bit different now than it was kind of a few years ago. And I know I touched on this a little bit earlier with the raw versus polished, but first of all, I think a lot of people feel that they need really high quality camera equipment in order to take high quality photos or high quality videos. That's actually not the case. Even at TellTail, we use an iPhone for a lot of our, it's got her phone. She's an Android person. We've tried to convert her over, but she's holding strong. It's okay.
Hey, my camera is just as good as yours.
It's probably better. I know there's a lot of arguments to say it's better. But yeah, we have experimented with high quality content, like actual professional cameras, professional, video cameras, etc. But we find we can get really far with an iPhone. And so I think the same translates for breeders that are trying to create high quality content. Some questions though to ask yourself before you post a photo to your social media is the image in focus. Blurrier images don't tend to do as well as really crisp photos. Like even this one of Dobby, you can like see every little wave in her fur. This post did really, really well. I think it had like over 10,000 likes. Make sure it's not over filtered. That is one criticism of this, is I do think this one's a little bit more filtered than it probably needed to be, but this was posted a few years ago. Right now, the trend is definitely not to over filter your photos. So I'm sure you've all seen pictures that look just like the filter had a filter and that filter had a filter. It's like, that's not what it really looked like. People really want to see the reality of what they're looking at. And so a really over filtered photo is not as well received typically as one that's pretty like fresh. That doesn't mean you can't adjust the coloring a little bit if you feel like you can improve the quality of the picture. But I think the idea is make the photo look like what the reality actually was. Also, there was a trend for a while, I don't know if Snapchat caused this or Instagram caused this, but where people were putting a bunch of text over their pictures, and they would put like not just a watermark, but they would put a bunch of text over it. And we're seeing that not being as well received now. So removing the text overlays from photos seems to work well. That's not always the case on Reels. I know that things are constantly changing, so it seems like there's like a lot of rules and trends to follow up with, and we're always happy to do more videos on specifics like Reels or TikToks. But as far as photos on Instagram, typically text over the image doesn't really work as well. And on the last point, looking back at your posts to see what is doing better than other posts is really important. So if you find that videos are super well received and photos aren't doing as well, maybe lean into videos a little bit more. As far as breeder tips, so we have seen actually that light boxes make a huge difference with puppy pictures. I don't know if any of you guys have ever used a light box, but they're actually pretty low cost. I think there are some on Amazon that are in the $20 to $40 range. And as long as your puppies are comfortable being in the light box, it really does brighten up the detail of the photos or the videos, whatever you're using it for, and can really change the look of your puppy pictures.
The other thing is natural light. Don't take for granted natural light. It always does the trick.
My
and then
favorite place to take pictures is outside.
Yeah.
And then in terms of videos and pictures, I don't know if you've already touched on it, but like Instagram typically does that videos will go outside of your your network so you can reach more audiences, and photos will typically just stay within network. It's harder to reach people outside of the network unless it's like through hashtags. But depending on what your engagement metric you're trying to do, if you're trying to reach more people or focus on engagement, you can try to experiment with both of them.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We are seeing just a general preference on all social media platforms for videos. And that's not to say pictures are not still very relevant and doing well, but it does seem to feel like videos are doing more and capturing a wider audience. Okay, so with all of that said, I'm going to run through just a few kind of food for thought as it relates to breeders. I know I've touched on a few of these throughout the presentation, but want to make sure that you are giving thought to how all of this advice, and I know we were talking about a cat's Instagram, so how all of this advice applies to a dog breeders program. So a few questions that you should definitely reflect on personally and for your own program. The first one is, who are you actually looking to capture in your audience? So do you want other breeders to follow you, or are you looking for pet parents, or is it both? Are you not sure? So the reason why that's important is it helps you to tailor your content. So for example, pictures of cute puppies would really, resonate well with a broad audience, but a breeder may not need to see a behind the scenes look on something that isn't as relevant to them. So the first really big step is deciding who you want to follow you. The next is, and I mentioned this earlier, but reflect on what's unique about your breeding program. And it might be what you breed, it might be how you breed, it might be some specific aspects of your program, something about your dog's personality, something about your own personality. There are so many things that let you stand apart from the others that are trying to post in this space. So just spend some time thinking about that and then try to really lean into that on your posts. The third one is, are you speaking as a breeder, as someone who owns pets? Are you going to speak as a dog, as a puppy, whatever the case may be? But really trying to stay consistent with that voice will go a long way. I do want to spend a lot of time actually talking about number 4, because I think it's a really big point. It's very important for you to decide what you actually want to get out of a social media account. And there is no wrong answer here, but it's important for you to level set with yourself on what your expected outcome is. So are you trying to be famous? That's totally fine. If you want to be a famous dog breeder, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but it may require you to put a lot more into your social media. Oh, look at that. I was thumbs upping and it popped up. Okay. The second thing is, are you just trying to get the word out about your program? And that's just to a few hundred people, maybe a few thousand if you're lucky, but it's not something that you really want to spend a lot of time on. Another huge one, especially with so many terrible scammers out there, is, are you just trying to bring legitimacy to your program? Meaning when somebody is searching for you and they hear about you through the grapevine, somebody recommends you, are you just trying to create a space where the pet parent can come, see your Instagram, understand that you are exactly who you say you are and you're not a dog scammer? And that's really your only goal, because if that's the case, you're going to care a lot less about the number of followers that you have. For some people, it's like a photo album. They just like to track what's going on in their lives and they love looking back at it. That's, for example, how I use my own personal Instagram. I'm never trying to get more followers on my own personal Instagram. It's like a time capsule of what's been going on in my life. And I love to go back and look at my old photos. So that's also a completely fine goal if that's what you're trying to achieve. But if that's your goal, then don't expect to have 1 million followers. If that happens by accident, which is sort of what happened with Dobby's Instagram, then that's a happy accident. But the reality is, you typically see the output based on the input. If you're spending a lot of time taking great photos, you're trying to make sure that you're posting regularly, you're trying to engage with your audience, you're studying what hashtags, that type of investment might yield a bigger following than somebody who just posts photos here and there whenever they think about it and has different goals for their program. And then the last point here is really just how you can improve your content. So the workshops this week and the resources that we're sharing through TellTail hopefully will help to guide you. Hopefully this presentation was helpful as well, fingers crossed. But We have some handouts that are also going to be distributed this week, I believe all of them this week and maybe next, with some tips on how to take good photos and videos. But also, if you guys have questions, our team is here. We would love to help you. If you ever want to reach out and ask for tips on how to take better photos, how to take videos, ways that you can enhance your following, we are literally always willing to speak with breeders and love doing so. So those are some sort of breeder food for thought. Snuck another pun in there in case you guys didn't catch it. And that is the conclusion of the presentation, but I would love to take any specific questions that you guys have. I can dig in on anything I covered or anything that I did not cover. So take it away, if you have any. Otherwise, I don't need to hold you.
I have several questions, so I don't want to hog the Q&A, but I'll kick off if nobody else has a question yet. I get a lot of messages from random pet product companies. I probably get a message every day.
Yes.
They look super spammy, and the message basically says, hey, we want to send you free stuff, or we want to give you this discount code so you can buy some of our stuff, and then we want you to take a picture and post it and tag us, and you're going to be our new influencer, like you're going to be famous. And I get these I never respond to them because they make me nervous, but do you have any experience with those companies, like working with them?
Definitely. So it was always pretty clear to me, but I shouldn't say always. It was often very clear to me what was very spammy. So you guys will probably see on any post that you share, there's like an immediate response from somebody who says like, follow along. We're looking for animal models like that. Those things happen all the time. I delete them, completely ignore them. They're not worth your time. I didn't touch on this in the presentation, but I set up an email account for Dobby's Instagram because I was getting a bunch of DMs and I was like, if these are legitimate, outreach. Oops, my hand was about to raise again. I think I'm going to turn off that automatic, like whatever emoji thing. But basically it became clear in conversations with the brands who was legitimate and who was not. I think it's a really important point, especially for breeders though. Make sure that your time investment is actually worth a return. So if they're just giving you free product, it's product that you don't particularly care about or wouldn't have otherwise purchased on or been interested in buying, having to deliver content in exchange for that free product, honestly, the juice might not be worth the squeeze on what you're getting. But on the other hand, there was one brand promotion that I did with Dobby that paid extremely well, and all they wanted was a couple of photos. So I was like, you know what, fine. I did find that after that, I didn't actually enjoy the co-branding experience with her because Dobby's Instagram for me, as I mentioned, was about fun and relaxation. And I didn't want it to be something that became a business. At that time, I was working as a lawyer and I had enough on my plate and really did not want like a side business. And so after I did that co-branding promotion with it was like a litter box company, I just decided that I really wasn't going to engage in many more of those. Also, Dobby didn't love posing. I typically took pictures of her in her like natural habitat. I didn't like to make her pose for a lot of photos. Even the ones that look posed was just like her looking at me. So having to like force her to sit on this litter box that she had never really used before, it just did not feel good and not aligned with my own values and my relationship with Dobby. And so that's a piece of it. But to answer your question about spammy, you do not have to answer people. You can just delete the messages. Instagram tries to filter out the like, I didn't ask for this type of messages from the people that are in your follower base. So you can sort them, but don't feel like you have to respond if they feel spammy. If it sounds like an offer that you might be interested in, try to engage with them and see. But I have found that the most legitimate sellers, the most legitimate brands are very professional, and you'll feel that in your dialogue with them.
And they'll probably reach out to you like by email rather than in a DM.
Right? I actually don't know. It depends. So they might DM you first and say, hey, we're really interested in working with you. But I do think that it's a safe bet to question the initial outreach and just to say like, hey, I get a lot of spam. Would you mind shooting me an email or hopping on a quick call and we can talk? As you know, scammers are not the quickest to hop on a phone to just talk about things, because they're just trying to look for kind of the easy scam.
Yeah.
But they're out there. So I think just ask yourself if it's worth it. Like if it's just a bag of free food, is that worth having to post 2 or 3 videos in your feed, and worth the time that you'd have to invest to do so?
Cool. Thank you.
Cool.
That answered my question. Hopefully it answered. Rebecca had the same, almost same question.
Rebecca, I was going to say,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, just don't respond to them.
Yeah.
As much as you can, just ignore them. And if it gets really bad, you can block people as well, I think, for messaging you. If you want us to talk through how to do that, I'm more than happy to hop on a call and show you how to, or we can send you a recording of how to block people. But yeah, don't let them bother you, because then they win. Liza, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I had a thought earlier in the presentation. What if your goal is more followers in general? Like, so I have an Instagram account for my breeding program, but I'm actually now considering starting another one for like one particular dog, and I'm wondering how that could benefit my breeding account, because kind of my takeaway from this is that if I want more followers, maybe there's too much going on my like breeding account. Maybe I need to like zero in and focus on one dog or one puppy. And then I guess I would tag my breeding account. Do you have any thoughts on that? I'm totally thinking out loud.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with having multiple Instagram accounts. I think you have to question how much work it's going to be to maintain them. So that's a big one. I mean, you're now thinking about having to create content for a specific dog and also for the breeding program. But if the specific dog ends up having a really large following, that could work really well for your breeding program. So you could effectively cross promote for yourself. So I don't think there's anything wrong with it necessarily. In fact, it probably gives you even a little bit more legitimacy for your program, but it's a lot of work. It's fun in some ways, but again, you have to think about what are you trying to get out of that specific Instagram account? Are the incentives different than what you're trying to do for the breeding program Instagram account? So it's really just your call, but there's nothing necessarily wrong with splitting it out and having a couple of different accounts.
I've also seen if you have a couple of accounts, posting the same thing on both accounts does not do anyone any good. So so make sure that the accounts have very different voices and are only cross promoting as and when needed.
Yeah, I also think there's so much to be said about having pet parents tag you in pictures of the dogs that they share. Like on that day when they bring home a dog and announce to the world, whether it's on their own private Instagram, on their Facebook, whatever it is, to be proud in saying, I got my dog from this incredible trusted breeder is just such a big way to validate your program, and for other people who think that particular dog is adorable and want to go to a breeder that has a dog that looks just like that, to reach out to you and say, I learned of you through my friend that I follow on Instagram. So I think it's okay to ask pet parents to tag you in their announcement photo or to tag you in any photo of the dog that they're willing to. You obviously don't want to intrude on how they want to run their own Instagram account, but I think making it known that you would love that type of feedback and recommendations is huge.
And a shameless plug, you can always tag TellTail and we will always promote your stuff too, because we're also looking to build a trusted community, and educating other people about what a trusted breeder is part of our mission too. So I'm happy to cross promote things that way.
Totally agree with that. Completely. If you guys have anything in particular that you'd love for us to share, repost, you say it, we are there to support you. So trying to think what else I can tell you guys. It's funny because I had to kind of go back and study Dobby's Instagram again, because if you look at it, you'll see I haven't posted it in a while. But some of these things don't feel obvious in the moment, and then you go back and think, wow, that did work really well. So that's also important for your own Instagram or TikTok accounts, is to go back and really look at the ones that had a ton of likes or a ton of views and understand maybe what makes that post different than some of the others that you've shared.
My question is in regards to that. When you did go and look back, did you notice that there was any certain time of the day that you would post something where you'd get more views versus other times of the day?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. So yes, I noticed that at times when the world might be on pause for some reason, so for example, lunch hour or in the evenings or on a weekend or on a holiday, I did see a pop. I also saw that if I posted later in the day US time, I typically had more people internationally who would like and comment first. We have people all over the world following Dobby. I remember somebody telling me that they lived in Russia, and I was like, this reached Russia? It's wild. I mean, people in Switzerland, Germany, Italy that were like, we love Dobby. And I'm like, she is an international cat. This is amazing. She literally has no idea that she exists outside of this house. But yes, I think that it depends again on your audience. So if you're going after a particular subset of people, think about when they might most look at their phones. I also want to pass it to Sushmita because I vaguely remember, but you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, that there's a tool on Instagram that also helps you identify the most optimal time to post. So even if your gut is telling you that certain posts are doing better at different times, the algorithm also can help you prove out that that's actually the case.
Yes, that is very true. So if you go onto Instagram, if you have a business account, you can do this. If you have a personal account, it might not let you do that, but likely you'll have a business account. And if you go to like a professional dashboard, it will tell you what type of like demographics you're reaching. It'll tell you the most optimal time, especially because each program, like your account is reaching a certain group of people. So it might not be the most optimal for across accounts. So you have to look at what's specific to yours. A thing that might be a little bit tricky is that it might seem to say that like every hour of the day has about the same viewing. So you might have to use a little bit of discretion there. But because Instagram is also tied to Facebook, you might find differences in optimal times for Instagram versus optimal times for Facebook, which is interesting. So if you go to Meta Business Suite, that shows how you can differentiate. It's like one dashboard for both your Facebook account and your Instagram, and it'll say like the optimal times, demographics, all of that insight. It also can sort by activity, so it's easy for you. You don't have to like scroll through every picture. You can just say which one had the most reach, which one had the most likes, which one had the most comments, and you can sort and look at things that way. And also what's interesting is it shows based off of follower, like new followers and current followers. So you can see which ones reached a larger audience versus which one just stayed within your own network. It has a lot of really great tools.
Another point on that also, well, I guess before I change to this other point, I want to make sure, Sherry, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Because I had multiple accounts for Dobby, one on TikTok, one on Instagram, and then in theory, I had a Twitter and a Facebook, but honestly never posted on those. I also was very thoughtful about what type of content would resonate best with audiences on the different platforms. And I wanted people to follow both. So I wanted to make sure that there was unique content on Instagram that wasn't on TikTok and vice versa. So it's something else to think about is if you're trying to grow a Facebook following or a TikTok following, try to create content that is not found on your Instagram because it encourages people to want to follow those other accounts. And certain things just resonate better with a TikTok audience than they do with an Instagram audience. So as much as I was saying kind of raw and unpolished works across platforms, that is especially true on TikTok. So you'll see Instagram Reels are sometimes a little bit more polished. But TikTok is definitely more like, I just opened up my phone and I'm just going to walk you through my house right now. And, you know, makeup free, here is like my real life. That seems to work much better on TikTok. If that's interesting to you guys and you want to learn more about the differences between Instagram and TikTok, especially Reels and TikTok videos, Sush is our resident expert on this and is happy to probably do a video. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like we talk about this a lot. So
have you noticed too, like when you're doing reels and you select music, that what music you select will increase your views?
Yeah, so there's like a whole like science behind it too. And actually there's an infographic that I've put together that we'll be like sending out as well that has the different features of Instagram that you can use to optimize your reels and increase exposure. But you can use any music, but if there's an arrow where that music sign is, it means it's a trending audio, which basically means a bunch of people are posting videos about it and it's reaching a lot more people. again, there's like a whole science about it, and I don't want to take up too much time, but like you can specifically for audio, if you use a trending audio sound, you're just going to reach more people. And you have to experiment because sometimes like the trending audio sound doesn't work for you, but it works for someone else. So you might have to experiment with a bunch of different things, which is why it's not like one reel is going to make it. Like you might have to post 10 reels before you get one that succeeds. And you never want to like delete reels because even if one doesn't do well, if you post like 3 or 4 in a row, then suddenly you'll get like more views. So for example, I like post a few reels on my own channel, and like I'd maybe only get like 1,000 views or something, but then like all of a sudden overnight I would get like 6,000 more views because suddenly people are interested. So it just depends on what the algorithm and like who's working and how it's doing its thing. But audio is one great way to optimize reach.
Yeah, another question that we get often from breeders, or just that I've heard generally, is whether it makes sense to buy followers or to pay to promote. And I think this is another big topic that we can dig into. Largely, my advice is not to buy followers. And the main reason is that when you're growing an audience, it's all about organic growth and true engagement. Often when you buy followers, they're bots. So as much as I was saying earlier about kind of getting to that tipping point of seeing the number, if people see that you have a certain number of followers and it's kind of high, but then they go to your pictures and there's like 2 likes on your photos, it creates a little bit of inauthenticity in who you are as a brand and what you're trying to promote. So even if it takes longer, my advice is always to grow organically and grow. Oh yeah, Liza, good call out. Bought like a fake account, literally like digital fake accounts is typically what you're like buying. But yeah, grow more slowly and more organically as opposed to buying. Now, that is not necessarily true if you're trying to promote a specific like advertisement. Like if you really want to push something out to an audience, like if you're having an event, or I'm actually not familiar enough with whether you can push puppy related sales over Instagram. I assume not, because Facebook prohibits animal sales. So you want to be a little bit careful with that. And we could do literally a whole talk on deplatforming and why it's so tricky to be a breeder on Facebook. But
I have a tip sheet coming out for that, so there will be some suggestions there. But Instagram is not quite as strict, but I wouldn't recommend trying to sell on Instagram either.
Yeah, but if there's like a really unique photo, really unique video that you feel like might garner a big audience, it's okay to push to promote that. But I wouldn't necessarily encourage people purchasing followers, because it typically kind of decreases your legitimacy as an Instagram account if people find out that you've done that. Not to say you should panic if you've done that, but I just wouldn't necessarily recommend it as a strategy. I know we're almost up on time. Any other questions that you guys want to talk about? I'm more than happy to cover anything. Nope. Well, I'm happy to hang out for a little bit. Liza, did you have any other questions?
No, I don't think so. I'm always the queen of questions.
I love it. Oh, you're so welcome, Rebecca. I hope this was helpful, you guys. And honestly, we're always here. I know we're hosting this as like a live, but if you have questions, you want us to look at something on your Instagram, you have questions about tips and tricks or anything not related to marketing and social media, our team seriously loves speaking to breeders. So anytime we have an opportunity to talk to you guys, we'll take it. So just reach out, email, text, message on TellTail, whatever you want to do in the Facebook group.
In the Facebook group.
Yeah. Also, I was going to encourage everybody here, well, 2 things, to send out invites to that Facebook group. That is something we really want you to share with your network. We would love to grow that Facebook community as much as possible. And also, each of you should have received a referral code for TellTail. And so if you guys continue to share that code through the end of the month, anybody who signs up with your code and is approved to join TellTail, you guys get $10 in cash. So we're going to keep that promotion going through the end of the month. But yeah, I want to put money back in your pockets to improve your programs as much as you guys want to.
And the last bit is, if you like the session today, if you can post in the Facebook group something that you learned, just so other people know that this was useful for you and that they can come to another future session or to watch the live recording afterwards. We want to make sure that people get this information if they find it helpful.
Yeah, and any other feedback you have, things that didn't work well about this particular like setup, the presentation, we're always looking to improve.
And on the note of sharing and cross-posting, if you do share and share stuff on your social media or anything like pictures, videos, tag us and we can cross-promote.
There you go. We're already putting this into action, guys. It's amazing. Cool.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for everything today. I learned so much personally. I'm very excited about this.
I am glad it was hopefully helpful. But like I said, it's not a one-shot deal. I'm always here if you guys want to chat about anything else. So thanks for coming. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
You are. Yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank y'all.
All right. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.